left off, we were talking about the fact that Shavuos is the Yom Hilula, the Yorkshire, the passing of the Baal Shem Tov. And who succeeded the Baal Shem Tov, who became his successor, was the Maggid the Mizrich. And I mentioned that even though he says the Maggid Mizrich, but in reality there was 1 year where there was someone else sitting on that chair, in that position, and that was actually the son of the Baal Shem Tov. His name was Rabbi Tzvi, and he was leading the Chassidim for 1 year. Good morning, welcome. So Rabbi Tzvi was Baal Shem Tov's son, and it was the following year on Shavuos where they were celebrating Chag HaShavuos and celebrating and commemorating the yahrzeit of the Baal Shem Tov. And Rabbi Tzvi stood up and he said that my father told me that the Shekhinah and the whole entourage has moved to the Maggid Mizrich. Maggid Mizrich was one of the students, and he was sitting in the crowd. And he said to him, let's change places. You sit in my chair where I'm sitting up front, and I'll sit in your place. And then Rabbi Tzvi became one of the students, and the Maggid became the next Rebbe. And even though we know so many stories of the great tzaddikim, that when they were offered a position of leadership, they resisted. Even the Baal Shem Tov, we know it took a few years. In one place it says it was 6 years that he is resisting to accept the position of leadership. Nevertheless, with the Maggid, we find that he accepted it right away. So obviously he knew that this was his mission without a question, and this is what he needs to do. So I told you yesterday, I just want to say a few words about the Mezritch Maggid. How did he become a chassid? The Mezritch Maggid became before he became a chassid, he was already a giant in both in Nigla, the revealed part of Torah, and in Kabbalah. And it's brought down that before he became a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov, there wasn't a Torah book that was in existence in his generation that he hadn't gone over it and studied it 101 times. So he was a giant of giants. And nevertheless, he had issues with the Baal Shem Tov, believe it or not. He wasn't so approving of the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid Mizrich. Thank you. Before he became a chassid. So how did he become a chassid? So the person who writes this story is a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. He wrote a book of stories and called Sipurim Noraim. And there he writes that he heard the story from the son of the person involved in the story, which I'll soon tell you. So one of the greatest leaders of that generation, he was a leader in Torah world, not a chassid. He was known by his sefer called Pnei Yoshua. It's a sefer that in all yeshivas, people study this. It's like one of the first things you learn when you study Gemara. You learn his commentary. And he lived in a place called Königsberg, I think. So the Mezritch Maggid used to travel there from time to time because Mezritch Maggid had a problem with his legs. He actually walked on crutches. And over there were certain, I guess, springs, water that was very helpful. He used to go there from time to time for health reasons. And when he came, he would study Torah with this great rabbi. So what happened was that this rabbi, Pnei Yeshua, was once teaching a class, and I guess his secretary interrupted in the middle and said there's someone outside that told me that he told me to ask you to come outside. He needs to speak to you. So he said, tell him I'm giving the class and you're not allowed to interrupt Torah study, especially in public, and after my class I can talk to him. So he came back 2 minutes later and said the person outside said it's urgent. Okay, urgent. So he stopped the class, went outside, saw someone he didn't recognize, and he told him something shocking. He said, you should know that the sheikhet the man who's the one who shechts the meat in your town, for the past 10 years, he's been shechting the meat intentionally in a way that it's treif. And everybody's eating that meat. And of course, he was shocked. He says, how can you know that? How can I prove this? So he says, you'll call him in and you tell him that you suspect that he's doing it, and you'll see that he'll admit himself, he'll confess. Before I had a chance to ask him, who are you? Like, how in the world do you know what's going on in my town more than me? The wagon drove off, and he never got to find out who it was. But naturally, he was all shook up. And after the class, he called the sheikh, and he did exactly that. And sure enough, he said, yes, it's true. He admitted. And of course, a lot had to be done to rectify it. A few months later, he suspected that maybe this was the Baal Shem Tov because he heard all these miraculous stories, so maybe that's who it was. A few months later, he's sitting giving a quiz, and again he gets a message. That same person is here again. This time he went out right away. And he said to him, I want you to know that when a Dov Ber Mezrich comes here to you, tell him that if he wants to be healed, he's going to have to come to me. Again, he didn't tell him who's me, who are you, but he just drove off. And he understood it was the Baal Shem Tov. So he understood it was the Baal Shem Tov. And he went, and when the Mezritch Magid came to me, he told him the story, what happened the first time, what happened the second time. So Mezritch Magid was a person who he actually had certain questions about the Baal Shem Tov's way, and he didn't agree with it. So he said to him, so what do you think? Should I go or not? He said, I think you should go. But I'm asking you for a favor. After you go, come back and tell me what you had, what you saw, what you experienced. And he went. And the rest is history. He became a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov. But the next time that he went to Königsberg and he met the B'nai Yeshua, so he found out that he became a chassid. He said, but you had so many questions. So he says, that's before I met him. Once I met him and I saw who he is, it's even hard to believe that he's actually a human being of flesh and blood, and he's not some sort of an angel. So all these kashas, all these questions went out the window. This is not found in a Chabad source, but I saw this in another book from other Hasidic sources. They write that when the Mezritch Magid came to the Baal Shem Tov, they had a conversation, and he didn't see anything out of the ordinary, and he decided I wasted my time to come here. But they made up to meet again the next day. And the next day when we met, he took out a sefer of, I guess from the Arizal maybe, or from the Zohar they were learning. Everything that they touched on, whatever they learned about, let's say this and this level, that level, this world, or that angel, everything they spoke about became revealed to him in the room while they were speaking. And then he became a chassid. So that's one thing. Another thing I want to mention is it's also, so at the beginning of the leadership of the Mezritch Magid is the yahrzeit of the Baal Shem Tov. But there's also a third thing, and that's the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek also became a Rebbe. He accepted leadership. I'm not sure if it was today, yesterday, or tomorrow, because the words are a few days before Shavuos. So it must have been one of these days. And just to tell you the story behind that, also a very amazing, incredible story. The second Rebbe of Chabad was the Mittel Rebbe. When the Mittel Rebbe was nostalgic, there were three possibilities of who could become the next Rebbe. One was the Mittel Rebbe had a brother, which means the Alter Rebbe said had another son, whose name was Chaim Avram, and just like he could have become the Rebbe, he's a son of the Alter Rebbe. That was one possibility. But what happened was that when they came to him, he said, "No, not me. Go to the Tzemach Tzedek, which is a grandson." Tzemach Tzedek was a grandson of the Alter Rebbe. His mother was the Alter Rebbe's daughter. He was also the son-in-law of the Mittel Rebbe. He had two connections. Number one, he married his first cousin. So he was the son-in-law of the Mittel Rebbe, and he was a grandson of the Alter Rebbe. Came to Tzemach Tzedek, he said, "No, not me. Go to my uncle, Reb Chaim Avram." And there was a third candidate. The Mitul Rebbe had a son who was also a very big tzaddik. His name was Reb Nachum. So basically, when the Reb Nachum go to my uncle, go to my nephew, go to my brother-in-law, they were going back and forth. This went on for a few months. It was a few days before Shavuos. And one of the biggest chassidim at that time was a chassid called Reb Peretz Chaim. And he and a group of other rabbanim went together, and they were pleading with the Tzemach Tzedek to accept leadership. And then he said, I have proof that you, from the Mishnah, that you are supposed to be the Rebbe. I said, okay, I don't want to argue if you have a Mishnah. What do you have? So he told them something. We just had it in Rashi recently. It says in Gemara that when a boy is born, he's more connected to the mother. When a girl is born, she's more connected to the father. Ish mazriya tchila yoledus keva. Ish mazriya tchila yoledus zachar. So therefore, you are a son of the Alter Rebbe's daughter. So you're very connected to your mother. Your mother is the daughter of the Alter Rebbe, so she's more connected to the Alter Rebbe. So you're the strongest connection to the Alter Rebbe, because it's through a daughter. And Tzemach Tzedek said, okay, and he agreed. And it's written in the Sikhs, why did he agree? For another reason. He already had a dream from the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe told him the same words, that when the Gemara says that a boy is more connected to the mother and the mother is more connected to the father, the boy connected to the mother, that's you, and the mother connected to the father, the woman, that's your mother. So he already heard this from the Alter Rebbe, and he realized that this is from Shemayim that he has to take over. And what's the first thing a Rebbe does when he becomes a Rebbe? Like by us, the Rebbe said a Maimer, Basilagani. He said a Maimer. The Maimer began with the words, Al Shloisha Dvarim Ha'olam Omer. The world stands on three things. From Pirkei Avos. He started to say the Maimer, then he stopped. And he said, don't accuse me of something it's not me. I have no choice. My grandfather told me to say it. But he's looking around like, who's he talking to? After that, he continued the Maimer. But when he said those words, it was like totally mysterious. Who is he talking to? Don't accuse me that of something which is not me. I have no choice. My grandfather's telling me to say the Maimer. A few days later, there was an older chassid. He was the chassid of the Alter Rebbe and the Mitul Rebbe, and then he became a chassid of Tzemach Tzedek. And he told the chassid, Alter Rebbe was talking to me. And he told him why. So he told him the following story. We all know that the Tzemach Tzedek's mother, her name was Dvorah Leah, she gave up her life for the Alter Rebbe. I don't know if I ever told the story here in school, but that's a long story in itself. That she found out from the Alter Rebbe a certain year that he's going to pass away because of his spreading Chassidus. When she found that out, she took upon herself that she will replace the Alter Rebbe. And the whole story, how she did it with the Bezdin, and 3 days after she did that, she actually passed away. Tzemach Tzedek was 2 years old at the time. And Alter Rebbe promised her that he'll raise the Tzemach Tzedek like his own child. So the Tzemach Tzedek was always in the Alter Rebbe's room, near the Alter Rebbe, around the Alter Rebbe. So he said that one time the Alter Rebbe said a Maimer. The Maimer was very deep, and we didn't get it. So one of the Chassidim asked the Alter Rebbe, would he repeat the Maimer again? The Alter Rebbe said, not for everyone, but if a small group of people come into his room, he'll repeat the Maimer. Okay? So we were waiting by the Alter Rebbe's room. We knew the Alter Rebbe was davening. They were waiting for him to finish davening. And then they would go in. Of course, they were curious to know where he's up to. So even though they couldn't see the Alter Rebbe, there were cracks in the wall. And through the cracks in the wall, they could see the little child, the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek copied the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe was davening, he also davened. The Alter Rebbe put on tefillin, he also put on tefillin. What does it mean, tefillin? He took potatoes, and he put a string through it, tied it onto his hand, and he had one tefillin hand, the other potato was on his head, and he's shaking also. So they noticed that he's taking off his potatoes. So they understood the Alter Rebbe is probably taking off his tefillin. They got ready, and sure enough, a few minutes later, the door opens up. The Alter Rebbe tells them to come in. This chassid, he was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, but at that point, he was younger than everybody else. He was a young person. And as he was about to walk in, he just froze from awe. He froze. He stood by the door, couldn't walk. Alter Rebbe said, "Who's standing by the door?" So someone said, "A younger man," which means a young man. The Alter Rebbe said, "A young man will become an older man. He should just come in." Anyway, he walked in, and the Alter Rebbe is about to start the Maimer. And Tzemach Tzedek was a little boy, as they said, and he was playing with the strings from his tefillin. It looks like the string got tangled up by a leg or of the table or the chair, and he was trying to untangle it. So this chassid said that I was afraid that it's going to disturb me. I won't be able to concentrate properly. So I was about to bend down and tell him to please play someplace else so I could concentrate. As I'm about to bend down, the Rebbe, who started the mimer already, stops, and he said, "Leave him. He's listening. He'll come one day and we'll know that he's listening." Again, nobody knew who he's talking to, but he knew the Rebbe was talking to him. The Rebbe's mimer began with the words, "Shloisha Dvarim Ha'olim Ha'olim." So now when the Tzemach Tzedek became a Rebbe, and he started the mimer with the same words, he was like, "Can't believe it. He's showing me that he heard the mimer when he was a little boy, 2-3 years old." So the Tzemach Tzedek, who knew what he was thinking, so he stopped and he said, "Don't accuse me of trying to show anything. I have no choice. The Alter Rebbe told me I should say this mimer." That's the story of Tzemach Tzedek. So he became the third Rebbe of Chabad. Of course, Tzemach Tzedek, one of the things that stands out about the Tzemach Tzedek is that's the generation that the machloikas, the big controversy between Chassidim and Misnagdim came to an end. In other words, at that point, Chassidim and non-Chassidim, they all worked together and each one respected the other. The fighting stopped at that point. The fact that there's some fighting today, unfortunately, was renewed by certain people today. But for literally 100 years since the Tzemach Tzedek, it was perfectly fine and quiet. There was hardly any kind of friction. Tzemach Tzedek is also known for two other things that were in his days. One was they had a whole underground movement, and that's why we don't know too much about it, because this was something against the Tsar, against the government, and it had to be done all in a hidden way, so we don't know details. But in the times of the Tzemach Tzedek, there was a gzeira, a decree, which the Tsar made that little children at the age of 7 or 8 have to be taken to the army, whether they like it or not. And he claimed that if you raise children from that age, they'll be the best soldiers in the world. But the real reason was because he was a big anti-Semite, and he used this as an excuse to get the children in his hands and force them to convert to Christianity. Unfortunately, thousands of children were involved, and Tzemach Tzedek created a movement, like I said, a hidden movement, underground movement, to save these children, go into these camps, or find out where they are and take them away and bring them back to their parents. They were known as Cantonisti, that's what they were called. And a lot of stories with these children that were unbelievable, courageous, and brave. They were taken away from their home very young, but when it came to being forced to eating treif or work on Shabbos or, God forbid, convert, they were very, very strong. A lot of them were beaten and they didn't give in. And there's a lot of history about that. That's one thing in Tzemach Tzedek's generation. For 25 years, this lasted. Another thing was, in his generation, I'm not sure why, but there was a lot of unfortunate stories of women that were agunas, women that their husbands disappeared. They didn't know whether they, God forbid, died, or they were held captive somewhere, or they just left because they were angry and they didn't want their wife to get a get, which for a woman is a very difficult situation to be in. You don't have a husband and you can't marry anyone else because you don't have a get. So there were a lot of stories, miraculous stories of how women came to the Tzemach Tzedek, and he revealed to them where their husband is. In some places, he explained it in some sort of a logical explanation. In some places, it was just open Ruach HaKodesh. He told them, go to this city and go to this building, and the rest will happen. And these are the kind of stories that have with Tzemach Tzedek. More than any other Rebbe. Okay, I want to bring just a few things. This is the last class that we have. So one of them is I just want to give this out so everyone should not miss out on it. This is from Hayom Yom, so probably you all see Hayom Yom, but I want to make sure you see it on time. These are two Hayom Yoms. One is the third day of Sivan, which is today, and the other one's the fourth day of Sivan. And it says like this, whoever will look into, but it says in Tosfos, in his comment beginning Torah, etc. This is in Gemara Shabbos. You'll understand that the Yom Tov Shavuos is an auspicious time. In Hebrew, it's called the Eis Ratzon. And on that day, Hashem confounds the Satan. They write supernal accuser. The word is Satan, which means the Satan's mouth is closed. And it's similar to what happens during Rosh Hashanah when you blow the shofar, or on the day of Yom Kippur. These are such holy days that the Eibishter sort of closes the mouth of the Satan, and even though Shavuos is not one of those days, but the truth is, according to this commentary, yet Shavuos today is that the Satan is not able to say any of his prosecuting arguments, and therefore for us it means it's an amazing time to get Hashem's brachas that we need. And the second thing is similar to that, where it says Shavuos is an opportune time to achieve everything in improving Torah study. In other words, it's a good time in general because the Satan who's the prosecuting is quiet, can't say anything. But another thing is it's specifically conducive to Torah, which means if a person wants to make a certain resolution regarding Torah or mitzvahs to increase in his spiritual growth, again, this is an exceptional time because the things that normally block us, which comes from the Satan, are not effective on that day. That's one thing which I wanted to mention. Another thing I wanted to mention is in the booklet, in the booklet that you have the booklet? Everyone has it? She, you want to bring a few more to the table if you don't mind? Thank you. This is interesting because this is in the Chabad Siddur, but we don't say in Chabad. I don't know why. It's page 77. So in many communities, I would say perhaps most communities outside of Chabad read this in Shul before they read the Torah on Shavuos. Page 77. Agadamot, it's called. It's a song. It's all in Aramaic. Baruch Hashem, we have English translation, but it's a beautiful song. But there's a very, it's an amazing story behind the song. And the story is that there was a community, I think they say about 1,000 years ago, that there was a decree there from whoever was running. There was a priest who was a big anti-Semite. He had sorcery powers. And he got the king to come out against the Jews. And they were afraid they would be killed. They didn't know what to do. And then in those days when they were worried about what to do, they had a dream. And the dream was, and everybody in the heads of the community all had the same dream. The dream was, if you get someone, one of the people of the 10 tribes that are on the other side of the Sambacha, they'll be able to defeat this priest. Everyone came to shul, they shared the dream. So first of all, they knew that it's emes because everyone's having the same dream. But how do you get to the other side of the Sambacha? Where is it? Not only that, what is Sambacha? The Gemara says there's a river somewhere that there are rocks shooting out of the water constantly. Only one day a week that it doesn't, and that's on Shabbos. This is one of the Gemaras that people question: is this literal? Is this a metaphor? From this story, it appears that it's actually literal, and but no one knows where this is. Even today, with all our technology, we don't know such a place. There's a river throwing rocks, and there's a whole community of 10 tribes living there. How could that be? Today's day and age. So I'm not sure. But this is the story. Just tell you what the tradition is. That they had a meeting, and the first question was, how do we get there? Second question is, even if you get there, you can't cross the river if there's rocks flying. The only day you can cross the river is on Shabbat, but Shabbat is not allowed to cross the river. You're not allowed to swim in the river. So one person, his name was Rabbi Majeski. He was known to be a very big tzaddik. He stood up and said, I'll take it upon myself. And it was a very big thing, because once you go, you can't come back. Why? To go there. Thank you for the water. To go there on Shabbos, you're allowed to, because you're going to save lives. But to come back, you're not saving lives anymore, so you're going to be stuck there. So he had to say goodbye to his family and sort of have Mesiras Nefesh to save the community. Because it was clear from the dream that there's someone there that can save the community. He went there. What? He found the place. And he knew where the place was. And he went across on Shabbos. When he came there, he told them what's going on. And there was someone there that came back. And he had a debate with his priest. Not only debate, but the priest started to use his power of sorcery. And he used the power of Kabbalah. And the priest got killed. And that was the end of the story. But before he left, after he left, while he was traveling, he wrote this poem about, because it was before Shavuos, he wrote it about Torah. And he asked this person, please give it over to the community. And this is that what he's leaving with them. This is the song. Even though it's a long thing, I just want to read the first few lines, because he wrote something here so beautiful that many people use it. You know, they use the lines that he wrote, the poetic lines. It goes like this. By the way, the word sa, it's really the end of a word. In Aramaic, a lot of words end with the samach aleph. He just wrote it this way, and it's read with a special tune. There's a tune how to read this. Not the same tune that you read the Torah, different tune. Before I begin to speak, desiring to utter words of praise, I first request permission and authorization. Trembling, I beg with the 2 or 3 stanzas, with the permission of him who creates and sustains the world forever. And he starts where he speaks about Hashem. His might is eternal, and it could not be described adequately. Even if the heaven, this is the line I'm talking about, even if the heavens were parchment, imagine all the heavens was parchment. All the trees in the world were quills, were pens. All the oceans in the world were water, instead of water would be ink. All the inhabitants, all the people in the world would be scribes, and they would write. They wouldn't be able to write, the glorious master of the heavens and sovereignty of the earth, alone established the world and wrapped it in mystery. In other words, basically, he's saying that if all the trees would be pens, and all the water in the oceans would be ink, and all the people would be scribes, and they'd all be writing the greatness of Hashem, they still wouldn't be able to write enough. And the reason is because Hashem is infinite, and everything we describe is finite. And finite doesn't come anywhere close to infinite. Why in Chabad we don't read it, I don't know. There's also another thing which they read in a lot of shuls on Shavuos, which is the book of Rus. Because Rus was the mother, the source of King David, David HaMelech. And again, in Chabad, we don't, people will learn it maybe for Shavuot, like we learn it here in school, but we don't read it. Not that, and not the Akdamas. What? If they really what? At home. Read what? Akdamas? The book of Ruth. Oh, Ruth? They don't read it in shul, but I'm saying the people who learn it, maybe it's not a custom, but people might just do that because it's connected to shuls. one of the things which is in the booklet, which I wrote down, but I didn't go into it, is number 60. I want to explain that to you. It says that one of the miracles that happened when the Torah was given was Royan es Hanishma v'Shemen es Hanira. It says in the Chumash, we can see it here on page 65a. Look at page 65a. Page 65, then a little a after it. On top of the page, Pasuk Tezvav, it says, all the people, people saw the sounds, the flame, the sounds of the shofar. Okay, when it says they saw the sound of the shofar, fine. What does it mean they saw the kolos? They saw the noise. You don't see noise, you hear noise. So it says in Gemara that this teaches us that one of the miracles that happened when the Torah was given, look at Rashi, saw the sounds. See Rashi in the bottom? Reina Sanishma. They saw that which normally is heard, which is impossible to see on any other occasion. And then there's another place where from there it appears that sound, which is normally heard, they were able to see. How that miracle took place, we don't understand, because we can't understand how could you see sound, and how could you hear things that you normally see. What does that mean? But that was a nest that happened by, but the Rebbe explains there's a deeper meaning to this nest. And the deeper meaning is that the difference between hearing and seeing is, to us, when you see something, this is our reality. It's much closer to us. It's something which is really connects with us in a very real way. When we hear something, even though we hear it, but nevertheless, it doesn't connect with us in the same way. To give an example, a story in Gemara, where the Gemara said, Rabbi Majeski, before he passed away, he said to his students, they should ask him for a bracha. He gave them a bracha. And what was the bracha? That you should have fear of Hashem like you have fear of humans. So they were very disappointed. They said, that's it? I mean, fear of Hashem like a fear of a person? Like that's not such a big bracha. And fear of Hashem should be 10 times more than the fear of a person. So he said, no, it's a very big bracha. And to explain it, he said, when a person does something, he said, I hope nobody's watching me. You should feel like that way about Hashem. What does it mean? It means to say, if you stop and ask the average person, an average Jew that is a religious Jew, which means he believes in Hashem, follows Torah, but we're not perfect, so we all do something a little bit out of line here and there. And you ask a person, if a person would be watching you, a person, not even a king, would you do what you just did? Let's say you got angry and you threw something out of anger, you screamed at someone. If the Rebbe would be watching you, would you do it in front of the Rebbe? Of course not. Even if a certain thing that even if an ordinary person would watch me, I just wouldn't do it. I'd be embarrassed to do it. So being that do you believe that Hashem is watching you? Yeah. So how come you did it? If Hashem is watching you, and you wouldn't even do it if a regular person would be watching you, the King of Kings is watching you, why did you do it? And it's not because he doesn't believe, he does believe. So what is it? And the answer is, even though I know Hashem is watching me, and I believe Hashem is watching me, but it's not this, because I don't see it, it's not the same reality like I see a pair of eyes looking at me. It's a whole different kind of reality. I know it, but it's still distant from me. When you see something, this is very real to me. So the Rebbe said like this, a neshama, before it comes down to this world, godliness is something which the neshama sees. That's its natural experience. When the neshama up there hears that there's a physical world, and in this physical world, Hashem is concealed, there are even people who don't even believe in Hashem, but even those that do believe, it's still very concealed. They don't have such a clear, sharp, recognition of Hashem. The neshama up there has a hard time understanding it. How could it be? Hashem is everything. When the neshama comes down, it turns around. Down here, everything Gashmis is things that we see, and godliness is something which we're told about, we learn about, but we don't see it naturally. So in a sense, godliness up there is Re'iyah, we see it. Gashmis up there, and a world of concealment, they hear about it, but they don't really experience it firsthand. They have the neshama up there has to do somersaults to understand how could be people living in this world and not see clearly that everything is Hashem. Down here, when the neshama comes down here, it's the reverse. The reverse is that the reality to us is Gashmias and a world which is independent, and we have to do somersaults to understand that the Hashem is really running everything. So when Hashem made a miracle, what's the miracle that happened when the Torah was given? That the Yidden were able to see what they normally hear, and they were to hear what they normally see, which means Hashem became so revealed to them that this became to them the reality, like we see things, and Gashmias, and the world the way we know it as a physical world that conceals godliness, that became to them like something which you hear, something which is distant from them. Of course, it didn't last, because it was only by Matan Torah, but for those moments when they received the Torah, Hashem was so revealed to them that this became their reality. And even though they knew there's a world where godliness is concealed, but that to them was not the reality. That was like something which they knew the world exists in a hidden way. But their reality, and that's one of the things that will be when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, we will see godliness in such a way that this will become the norm and the reality to us, just like now Gashmis is reality. And the opposite, which is seeing the world as separate and independent, that's going to be something which is distant from us, even though we know it does exist, but it'll be distant from our consciousness. So I want to conclude, at least, with just reminding everybody that one of the most important things is Shavuos is, I think I mentioned that Shavuos, there's no special halachas like Pesach and Lulav and Esrog, but one of the customs, besides eating cheesecake and blintzes and all that, but one of the important customs is to go to shul and to hear the reading of Seres HaDibros. And Hashem says that it's as if you were hearing it. And of course, it's very important, the idea that children should be there, and they should also hear the reading good. And I think I already mentioned this, number 67, about that the Rebbe said, that the Rebbe said that when people give each other a bracha for Shavuos, we should use these words, Kabbalah Sateira b'simcha b'pnimiyus, which means to receive the Torah, but you should receive it with simcha, or b'pnimiyus means that you should internalize the Torah that you're going to learn and you're going to receive. Okay, so I'd like to wish everybody Kabbalah Sateira b'simcha b'pnimiyus, and hopefully all these classes help you have a little bit of a deeper understanding of what it's all about.
That in order to get to the previous, you have to be the same.
That is very true. If a person's not the simcha, the doors are blocked. When you besimcha, everything opens up. When things open up, everything going. The good things. Yeah. Okay.
So nice to be back.
Yes, welcome back. Okay. Thank you.
נגמרת, נכון? לא צריך לפרש? זה בסדר ככה?
כמעט יצאת מהמדינה.
אוקיי, אבל זה רשום? נכון שעשיתי לשנות ככה? אוקיי.